Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we are tackling a really massive piece of Victorian literature. George Eliot's 1860 novel, The Mill on the Floss.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
Right. And to get to the bottom of this, we've pulled from literary critiques, Eliot's own biography, and obviously the text itself. The mission here is to figure out if we actually control our own destinies or if we're just, floating downstream.
Floating downstream is a good way to put it. It is a heavy question, but that is exactly what the sources say this book is asking. On the surface, we're looking at the Tulliver family at Dorhope Mill in Lincolnshire. This is back in the 1820s.
And 30s, right. But the geography is really just a backdrop, isn't it? Like it's a backdrop for a psychological war zone.
Exactly. And the combatants are basically a brother and sister, Tom and Maggie Tulliver. Our sources highlight that Eliot practically invented the modern psychological novel here. She doesn't just show us Maggie making bad choices, she traces the microscopic neurological impulses that lead to them.
You have Maggie, who is passionate, highly intellectual, dark-complexioned, and she's basically starved for any kind of affection or mental stimulation.
And then you have Tom. If Maggie is the chaotic emotional force, then Tom is the immovable object. He is rigid, pragmatic, obsessed with justice. When their father goes bankrupt and loses the mill, Tom steps up. He pays the debts, becomes the man of the house, and completely shuts down emotionally to survive.
The tragedy of gender roles here is so stark. Tom is forced into this box of toxic stoicism, while Maggie is put in a box of irrelevance. She has this brilliant mind, but because she's a woman in the 1830s, it's treated almost like a deformity.
Yeah, and reading about her isolation, you can really feel the author's own pulse in it. This isn't just fiction for George Eliot.
Right, because as we know, George Eliot was the pen name for Mary Ann Evans. At the time she was writing this, she was living with a married man, George Henry Lewes, and she was a total social pariah. That claustrophobia Maggie feels, being judged by every set of eyes in St. Augs, that is the real-time anxiety of Mary Ann Evans bleeding onto the page. We're just reporting what the biographers note here, but the parallel is undeniable.
Which brings us to the central philosophy of the book, determinism. The idea that character is destiny, and that external forces, like the river Floss itself, are stronger than our free will. You see this play out in Maggie's romantic entanglements. First, there is Philip Wakem.
Philip is the son of the lawyer who destroyed Maggie's father. He is sensitive and intellectual. He's actually Maggie's perfect match mentally, but physically he's hunchbacked, and socially he is forbidden fruit. Tom views the Wakems as a moral contamination.
But the real psychological heavy lifting happens with Stephen Guest. This is where the book moves from a family drama to a masterpiece of behavioral psychology. Stephen is engaged to Maggie's cousin Lucy.
Right, they're attracted to each other, but they don't actively decide to have an affair.
Exactly. This is the concept of the drift. It is arguably the most terrifying idea in the novel. Maggie and Stephen go for a boat ride, and they simply don't turn back. They don't actively choose to run away to Mudport. They just fail to choose not to.
It is a total suspension of the will. Eliot describes it so perfectly. That dreamy state where you just let the current take you because fighting it is too hard.
Yeah.
They drift past the point of no return. It's not an active choice to do evil. It's just a failure to hit the brakes.
Precisely. And that passivity destroys her. Even though Maggie wakes up from this drift, realizes what has happened, and refuses to marry Stephen, the damage is already done.
She returns to St. Augs to face the music. But society doesn't care about her internal moral victory. She is labeled a fallen woman.
And the person who judges her harshest is Tom. He turns her away from the mill. It's a brutal rejection. But then the metaphor becomes literal. The river Floss floods.
The flood is the ultimate deterministic force. It sweeps away all the petty social squabbles. Maggie, in a moment of supreme agency, takes a boat and rows right into the flood to save Tom.
That scene is incredible. It's the only time she completely takes charge of her destiny, and she uses it to save the person who rejected her. When she reaches him, there is this moment of total clarity. Tom finally sees her worth.
He realizes the depth of her love and strength. But almost immediately, their boat is capsized by debris. They drown in each other's arms. The epitaph reads, "In their death they were not divided."
It is such a complicated ending. On one hand, it's a tragedy, a complete waste of life and potential. On the other hand, it's the only way they could be reconciled. The world was too small for Maggie, so the river took her.
That is the core tension here. Is it a triumph of love or a critique of a society that had no place for a woman like Maggie?
Eliot doesn't give us the clear answer. She just shows us the cost of that tension.
Which asks you as the listener to look at your own choices. In your own life, are you actually steering the boat, or are you just drifting because the current is comfortable? But think about this too. If the flood hadn't happened, would Maggie have eventually found a way to carve out a space for herself? Or was she always doomed to drown in one way or another? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.